Welcome to In the Zone. Alongside Dylan Shields and Lucas Miller, I'm Owen Russell. With college basketball coming to a close and the NBA and NHL seasons heating up, we have a lot to cover in this episode. In the Zone starts now. San Diego State and UConn went head-to-head for the men's college basketball crown on Monday night. And despite the Aztecs getting off to a hot start, the Huskies came clawing back and beat San Diego State by double digits, 76-59. UConn won all their games by double digits en route to the 5th championship in school history. Dylan, your thoughts?
Well, I think most of us expected this coming, seeing the Final Four. UConn was clearly the best team out of the four. I'll give props to San Diego State. They made a pretty good run, beat some teams. They upset Alabama. They beat FAU at the buzzer. I'll give them credit, but I think UConn's coach, Dan Hurley, was the best coach this year. And I feel like that game was just a bad matchup for San Diego State. UConn has some really good forwards like Sunoco. He had 17 points and 10 rebounds, and Clinigan. And I just think that San Diego State couldn't match up with those forwards at all. They're just not a big enough team. And UConn also had guards like Tristan Newton, who was going off from three. He had 19 points. And they were also one of the best defensive teams this year. They only gave up 59 points in both Final Four games to Miami and San Diego State. So I just think obvious outcome, but UConn deserved it at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, giving headaches to every team this year. Any thoughts on that, Lucas?
I mean, kind of going off that, shout out to San Diego State. They had a great year. They had 32 wins and they won the Mountain West, but UConn was a powerhouse almost all season. They were ranked up in the top 10 a couple times, I think in the AP and definitely in KenPom. I think in that championship game, it was just like we saw throughout most of the tournament. Their opponent kind of hung with them a little bit in the start, but UConn got up to a 16-point lead. It obviously dwindled down to 5 near the end, but at the end, I mean, they had great shooting from Hawkins, they had great shooting from Newton, and they were able to pull it out just like they did all tournament.
Well, congratulations to Connecticut on that. Moving over to the women's side of the tournament, Iowa guard Caitlin Clark had an amazing tournament. However, LSU knocked off Iowa on Sunday to win the first championship in school history. Unfortunately, instead of celebrating these two teams, a majority of the attention regarding this game was given to the interaction between Angel Reese and Clark near the end. Lucas, let's talk about the competition between these two teams and how great each of these teams were in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that game was overshadowed a little by what happened at the end, and there's a lot of confrontation with that. But Iowa had a great season. Caitlin Clark was phenomenal. I think she had a 1,000-point mark this year, correct? She had 191 points throughout March Madness, throughout the tournament, which that ended up breaking the record for most points by someone during an NCAA tournament. LSU, they had a phenomenal year as well. I was hoping Iowa would overcome that and win because they had upset South Carolina, who was undefeated. But LSU, I mean, they ran them up and down the court. They put up, 102 points, I think?
Yeah, for sure.
Angel Reese, she was phenomenal this season, top 5 rebounds. I think Iowa just had a bad matchup there. They had a great season, but once they ran into LSU, I think that was all done for.
Anything else?
Yeah, I agree with the matchup. It just wasn't enough for Iowa. I think that game between LSU and Iowa was about star power. I think there was so many really good women on these teams. Williams had 20 points. Like you said, Caitlin Clark, one of the best in the tournament, had 30 points. One of the best three-point shooters in the country, 8 of 19 from three-point. But I just think LSU had better forwards. They out-rebounded them by 11. They had 14 offensive rebounds. I just think they had more depth, too, had much more bench points at the end than Iowa. Iowa kind of feels like their starting five's the only people they have. And LSU is also a really good three-point shooting team. Shot 64.7% from three-point line. I mean, you're probably most likely going to win a championship if you shoot that good from the three-point line. But overall, a really good tournament, a lot of star power, and a really good championship game.
Oh, absolutely. I think I read a stat online today. This was the most watched women's championship game in the tournament, history of the women's tournament. I really think that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, what they're doing for the game, for women's basketball in general, is awesome. Like, the season they had, Caitlin Clark in particular, pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, I watched some of that in the Final Four. I think Iowa, like I said, they just ran into a bad matchup there.
Yeah, absolutely. Going over to the NBA, we have the playoffs right around the corner here, and the Western Conference standings are ever so tight right now. Heading into Tuesday, the Lakers, Pelicans, Timberwolves, and Thunder were in the play-in seeds. Dylan, the Lakers have done a great job of rebounding after a terrible start to the season, but however, the Mavericks have plummeted since acquiring Kyrie Irving. Your thoughts?
Well, I think one of the main reasons that the Mavs are struggling, and Lucas said it, I think they're too small of a team. They're getting out-rebounded in every game. They really don't have any good power forwards. I mean, Luka's the leader in rebounds with 8.1. If your guard is the leader in rebounds, I think that's a concern. And people could say, yes, when Kyrie goes to a team, he can be a distraction, but he's held his own. I know he had a crucial foul in the Hawks game to lose the game, but I just feel like it's mainly like their depth around. They're kind of like a two-man team. They do have Dinwiddie and some other good depth, but I just think they need more big guys. And I think that's why the Lakers are playing really well. Anthony Davis is averaging 12.4 rebounds and LeBron with 8.4. And they were playing good before LeBron came back. Just imagine now with him coming back how good they can be. So I think the rebounding is the main reason why the Mavs are not doing so well, but it's why the Lakers are thriving.
Lucas, anything?
I think with Dallas, going off of what Dylan said with the depth, I think it looks like a different Dallas team than we saw last year. I don't know if that's because Luka doesn't have Brunson there anymore. You know, I feel like they kind of really thrived off each other. We saw that late last season, you know, going down the stretch in March and April. They are 4-11 though since acquiring Kyrie when Luka plays with him. I don't know how much of that is on Kyrie and how much of that is, you know, just them not meshing well together. But it's definitely completely different than what we've seen from Luka and the Mavs recently.
I don't necessarily think that it's either Luka or Kyrie that's the problem here. They've been carrying the entire offense from what I've seen. I think it was this last game they combined for around 50, 60 points, and then you had Maxi Kleber, who started the game, played 30 minutes. He had 2. Like, that's not going to get the job done at the end of the day.
I think most of it is like kind of a depth problem, but I feel like a lot of people, you know, they try and get the narrative of blaming it on if it's Kyrie or Luka just because of what we've seen with Kyrie's track record with Brooklyn. But I think it more is the case of a depth problem for Dallas right now, and that's not going to help them try and get their playoff chances up.
I feel like the reason why, too, is because the Lakers have some players that are thriving right now. Like Austin Reeves, he had 28 points last night, and Dennis Schroeder has stepped up. The Mavericks really don't have players like that who are stepping up, and the Lakers are.
Reeves has had a great season this year,
yes.
A really big step up. Well, going over to the other side of the country, over in the East here, 5 teams have clinched a playoff berth, including the New York Knicks. Lucas, the Knicks are finally back in the playoffs, but how far do you think they can go?
Not that far, to be totally honest with you. I mean, I think if they stay healthy, they can contend for maybe like the first round, but I think they're going to run into a lot of trouble when they get with Boston, they get with Philly or the Bucks. I honestly think the Cavs have a better chance of hanging with those teams than the Knicks do. I mean, obviously the Knicks have had a successful season. Julius Randle's putting up 25 points per game. Brunson has 24 points per game. But it's really going to be a matter of if those guys who have been carrying them to this great season, if they can stay healthy or not once they get into the playoffs.
I kind of agree with you. I think they can beat, if they run to the Cavs in the first round, they beat them last night. But I'm not sure if they run into the Sixers, Celtics, or Bucks with their star power that they're going to be able to win. The East is just too stacked. I mean, yes, Julius Randle's having one of the best seasons of his career, and the Jalen Brunson acquisition was definitely the best one they made. He's averaging 24 points per game. They could definitely beat some good teams, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. You're right. It does rely on guys like Randle, Brunson, Barrett, Quickly. Those guards, can they shoot well enough to beat these star power teams? I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think one of the things also with them in terms of if they can stay healthy, I mean, you have guys like Mitchell Robinson and Josh Hart who lead them defensively. That's going to be big time once they get into games with the Sixers, once they get into games with the Celtics, and definitely with the Bucks in the playoffs.
Absolutely. Well, with a month left in the semester, the spring sports season is heating up for Marauder Athletics. We send it over to Nicole Dalton with the latest in Millersville Athletics.
Welcome back, Marauders. I've got a full recap from this past week in Ville sports. Baseball had a triumphant doubleheader, winning 5-0 and 2-1, giving them their first 9-0 victory in the PSAC East. Women's lacrosse had 2 tough losses, losing 19-7 and 24-5 against Kutztown and Westchester. The Golden Rams scored 11 goals in the first quarter, assisting them to their 19-point lead, keeping them undefeated for their season. They will be looking to bounce back playing East Stroudsburg. Softball had a great week, winning 4 of their 5 games. They played a doubleheader this past Saturday against Lock Haven, winning 4-1 the first game and lost 6-5 for the second. They also had a doubleheader on Sunday, winning both games 10-1 and 2-1 against Shippensburg University. The Marauders had 10 hits and 10 runs, giving them the 10-1 win. They also played Kutztown, winning 6-2 and 17-14, improving them to 18-14 overall and 7-5 in PSAC play. Women's tennis had a successful week, beating Lock Haven 7-0 and Shepherd University 6-1, making them undefeated at home. They will next play Westchester University to battle for the first place in the East. Men's tennis also had success, beating Shepherd 6-1, winning 3 straight duels. Good luck to everyone competing as the spring season blooms.
Thanks, Nikki. Now joining us for the latest in MLB and NHL is Dylan Wiest and Travis Schuster. With the baseball season underway, Tampa Bay has started out 6-0. Meanwhile, for the reigning NL champs, the Phillies, it's been a poor start. Travis, your thoughts?
Well, it's shocking to see the Phillies get off to this poor start. Now, you maybe don't expect them to win the season opener or whatever, but you certainly don't expect them to lose the first 4 games and get swept by the Texas Rangers, of all teams
Not as the
out there. We can reasons why Phillies are doing so poorly. Well, we can look at batting and the pitching. The pitching off to a poor start. Aaron Nola, he only went three innings and some change. Gave up 4 hits, 5 earned runs off of him, and only struck out 4 batters. When you have starting pitching that can't make it into the 5th inning, that's where the bulk of the problems are. Even look at Zach Wheeler. Okay, he went 4 1/3 innings. He also gave up 4 earned runs. No, he struck out 7 batters in his start, but he couldn't make it to the 5th inning. The only pitcher that made it to the 5th inning so far, Bailey Falter made it to the 5th inning, and he gave up 4 earned runs. When you have such poor pitching off to a really bad start, the entire team just kind of falls apart around that.
I mean, the only person that I'd like to highlight personally would be Kyle Schwarber. Looking at last season, he was 2-22 when he started off the season, and then he had the season that he had. And right now, before the game, I don't know what the updated stats on that would be, but he's 1-17. But a bad start isn't something that we haven't seen from him before, and he's a player that can definitely recover that. So I think he'll be crucial. And with Harper and Hoskins not being available right now, I think having them back in the lineup, if at all during the season, could really help the Phillies locker room and the lineup itself.
Well, we know Hoskins isn't coming back. Harper's going to come back. I read he's got like a week out from coming back to starting throwing, starting practicing again. One thing I want to know about batting averages, we can look at the batting averages. Castellanos isn't producing like he should be producing. Schwarber definitely isn't producing. Schwarber has like 3 hits. He has 1 home run this season, but he has 3 hits. And they have a -25 run differential. -25, the worst run differential in a 4-game stretch since 1901 in Phillies franchise history.
Let's hope we can turn that around. Looking over at a different part of the league here, the Texas Rangers and the LA Angels, they've both started the season 3-1 and are ahead of the Astros in the AL West early on in the season. Dylan, do you see either of these teams having the upper hand on Houston at all?
No. I mean, looking at the Astros teams, they're just such a dominant team, especially for the AL West. I mean, looking at the lineup that they have, they've got such good players. Altuve right now has a broken thumb, but should be back soon in the lineup, so he's a crucial player for them. Verlander had an amazing playoff run with the team last year, and then they don't have him anymore, but they have Valdez, and so he can kind of fill that spot for them. They've got some good pitching. But even though the Dodgers and the Angels are both good teams in the MLB, they usually end up, once they get towards the end of the season or it's into the postseason, they kind of fall apart. And neither of the teams recently have been able to produce as much as people would expect from them. So I don't really think anybody would take the top spot from the Astros there at all.
No, me neither. Anything out of that?
No, it's just, you look back at the history of that division. The Astros won it last year. They won it the year before. Okay, they didn't win it in the COVID season, but 2019 season, they won that division. It's just, no team has the power to knock off the Astros. The Angels can come close because they have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, but it's going to take more than those 2 players to really, being within reach of what the Astros have. Because the Astros have more than just 2 good players. The Astros actually have a system built for baseball, and they have a great farm system. They can bring up a lot of prospects, and I just don't see the Astros, being knocked off that top spot anytime soon.
Yeah, me either, honestly. Well, let's switch our focus over here to the NHL a little bit. With the majority of playoffs positions already clinched, it all comes down to the wild card and seeding with a few games left in the season. Over in the Pacific, Edmonton and LA played on Tuesday night with some huge seeding implications on the line. Travis, your thoughts on the game between the Oilers and Kings?
Well, both teams have already clinched a playoff spot. They both are separated by 1 point in the standings after that game. Now, the Oilers defeated the Kings 3-1, and the game was really, it looked like it was lopsided a bit for the beginning. For the first half of the game, the Kings had so many chances. They put a lot of rubber, a lot of pucks on Stuart Skinner, the Oilers goaltender. However, Skinner stood strong, and you know, when you have a hot goalie going into time of the playoffs, that really bodes well for your team. Now the Oilers, of course, they outshot the Kings. Had the chances early on in the game. The Oilers won the shot total, 33 shots to 21. And you just look at who scored. Okay, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins started it for the Oilers, 36 goals, a pretty big snapshot coming from him. Then Victor Arvidsson tied it for the Kings, but then the Oilers, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, that line, you know, really was the main factor in this game. Leon Draisaitl picking up his 51st goal of the season. I mean, that's just insane.
That is.
51. It's insane to break 51 goals this season. It's insane to have multiple players break 51 goals. You look at, okay, McDavid, 62 goals this season. You put McDavid in the Leon Draisaitl line, just unstoppable, and that's really what did it for this for the Kings. Really, what cemented their fate for this game.
Gotcha. Dylan, anything?
I mean, it was a good game for sure. I mean, the first period there were 5 shots on goal combined between both teams, and for the Kings, all 3 of the shots were breakaways that Skinner had to stop there. But I mean, honestly, like you said, it's for a seeding race. So when the Oilers are able to beat the Kings, it basically changes the matchup of who they're going to play in the playoffs, looking at the rest of the West and kind of determining who they're going to play, and that moves them right behind Vegas. And when you have a line like that has McDavid, that has Draisaitl, a team like that, even though defensively they're not as good, when you have 2 players like that that are so dominant, they can kind of move that team ahead to a different level than what they would be without them.
Yeah, the Oilers is certainly going to be a threat in the playoffs. Like you said, the only concern is defense, and my concern for them is goaltending. You know, Stuart Skinner's good, but I don't trust Stuart Skinner going down the stretch.
Well, heading into Tuesday, the Islanders and the Penguins held the final 2 wildcard spots in the East. However, Florida, Buffalo, and Ottawa are still in reach. Dylan, who do you see taking this wildcard spots, and why?
All right, let me just take a second to say that there's no chance in the world that Buffalo makes the playoffs based on this. They're 6 points out of the playoffs. They have played 2 less games, but looking at the rest of their lineup, they play the Senators, which are a decent team. They do play the Blue Jackets, who are in the bottom of the league right now, aren't very good. But they play the Hurricanes, the Rangers, and the Devils, the top 3 teams in the division. Those are 3 teams that I don't see the Sabres beating all 3 of them. And they pretty much have to go 6-0 with some other upsets to be able to have them even make a chance. Now, looking at the Panthers, Islanders, and Penguins, all of them are close. Right now, it's the Panthers and Islanders that are in, but the Penguins are right behind. All have played the same amount of games at this point. And I think looking at the teams, the Panthers they play the Hurricanes. That's going to be a good matchup, one to see kind of shift a little bit in the East. The Islanders, they played the Lightning, the Flyers, who aren't doing too great this season, the Capitals and the Canadiens. So that'll be interesting for them. And the Penguins probably have the easiest remainder of the season with the Wild, the Red Wings, the Blackhawks, and the Blue Jackets. So it'll kind of depend on how those teams, how those games kind of line up. But I think, honestly, looking at it from the remainder of the games, I think it's probably going to be the Islanders and the Penguins. But Florida definitely has a chance to get in if they can play the rest of the games.
I would say they would have the best chance too, but I'm personally rooting for Buffalo in this situation. Travis, did you want to add anything?
Well, yeah, Buffalo's got no shot. They got to face Carolina, who's won 50 games this season. After Carolina, the Rangers. After them, the New Jersey Devils, who won 49 games this season. Yeah, Buffalo's done. Okay, Buffalo last night needed a win against the Florida Panthers, and they ran into a hot goaltender for the Florida Panthers. A hot third-string goaltender, mind you, Alex Lyon, who stopped 39 of 40 shots. I mean, that's just incredible for him because Lyon's an AHL goaltender, and it was just incredible for them, and that was a must-win game for Buffalo, and they couldn't pull it off. I think my prediction is I believe the Islanders will make it, and I believe Florida will make it. and Pittsburgh will be sitting outside. But it's a three-way race, and it could go either way.
A lot of different ways that could go. Well, going back over to the West for a second, Seattle and Winnipeg went into Tuesday holding the wild card spots. But Dylan, Calgary and Nashville are making the wild card race a bit interesting here. So who gets into the Western wild card? Let's not forget here, third place in the Central is still up for grabs as well.
So actually looking at that West, the 3 top spots in the West are now clinched. I mean, the Avs and Minnesota are both in there, Minnesota clinching. But looking at Winnipeg, Nashville, and Calgary, I think it'll be really interesting this next week because all 3 teams play each other. I mean, Winnipeg plays both Calgary and Nashville, Nashville playing Calgary and Winnipeg, and then Calgary playing Winnipeg and Nashville. So it's like they all play each other. So it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top with those, because one team is going to do worse than the others, and all when they're so close in that points race, it's going to be interesting. Winnipeg does have 5 games to play, same with Nashville, and then Calgary having 4 games to play. But it'll just be interesting. I mean, Winnipeg probably has the easiest because they play the Sharks next, and Calgary also playing the Sharks. So it's kind of like they've got that one game that should be a win for them, but it'll all come down to how the different teams play against each other, because when all 3 teams play each other in the last week of the season and they're all for that spot, it'll just be interesting to see who can come out on top.
Agreed. Travis, any?
Yeah, I think it's clear to say that the Jets control their own destiny. Right now, they're 2 points ahead of the Flames. They're 3 points ahead of Nashville. And like you said, the Jets will play the Flames, they'll play the Predators, and those are must-win games. And if the Jets can win those games or win one of those games, I think the Jets have the best shots to make the final wildcard place. Now, do the Jets have a shot in the playoffs? I wouldn't initially say so, but I wouldn't rule out the Jets in the playoffs because they have playoff experience, and when they can get hot in the playoffs, we've seen what happens when they get hot, like when they played Vegas the other year.
Well, that'll do it for this week's edition of In the Zone. For our entire crew here at The Zone, I'm Owen Russell, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week right here on In the Zone.